Welcome to the Bitcoin Source, the number one podcast for diverse Bitcoin knowledge. I'm Dawdu, your host for today's thought-provoking session. We're thrilled to have with us for a second go-round Alek Svetski. Alex has done a host of things such as launching the world's first Bitcoin-only savings app, Amber, to the spirit of Satoshi, and is now working on the Nostra-Enabled social network, Satlantis. So whether you're a seasoned Bitcoiner or you're just curious, there's something in this episode for everyone. So let's get started. Welcome, Alex.
Dawdu, thank you again for having me, man. Good to see you.
Likewise. So Alex, the last time we saw each other was in El Salvador, and you recently open sourced the first Bitcoin LLM, the Spirit of Satoshi. Can you explain what it is and how you see it contributing to the Bitcoin ecosystem?
Yeah, really briefly, we wanted to go and build like a Bitcoin-focused ChatGPT, basically. And not just something that uses ChatGPT under the hood and references some Bitcoin databases. That's like what everybody else did. We want to actually train a model on our own data set that we generated the data set by scraping and factoring and formatting thousands of like articles and books and podcasts and all this sort of stuff related to Bitcoin. We use the crowd, the Bitcoin crowd, to help us refine that data and make it more structured in a format that you can actually train a model with. And yeah, the goal was to build something where by default, if you asked it about inflation or about Bitcoin or about shitcoins or about trading or any of that sort of stuff, it would give you a response more like a Bitcoiner. And it was very hard. We trained about 30 or 40 models. We spent, a lot of money like training and all this sort of stuff. But in the end, I think we achieved something pretty good. Like the final model that we released was quite solid. It acted like a Bitcoiner. In fact, it even talked about things. Ask it what diet is the most functional. It will tell you to eat meat. So it was like some interesting like emergent phenomena came out of it. And in the end, we couldn't figure out how to commercialize it, basically. Like the theory that we had was maybe Bitcoin companies would pay to integrate it, all this sort of stuff. But it turned out the market wasn't big enough to really build a scalable business. So we open sourced it. We gave it to the public for free. Anybody can download it from Hugging Face now. They can run it locally if they want. It's a 7B model. I believe Start9 has it on there as well. So it's like a available app. It's usable, so we built like a really fancy interface for it, which is plugged into some other vector stores, which is kind of like LLM readable database to make it more enhanced, and that you can use for some sats at spiritofsatoshi.ai. It's a better experience, particularly if you don't know how to download your own model and run it, or you don't have a Start9. So yeah, there's a couple of like options there, but basically it is open sourced. It's with the community now, and I hope that it becomes a useful tool for people that get asked a lot of questions about Bitcoin. How does it work? What's good? Blah, blah, blah. Like you can just kind of send people to Spirit of Satoshi. We are going to wire it up to a Nostra account as well at some point, so that way people can just like tag there and use it. But we got to find the time to get around to it, bro.
100%. And Fesky, what I love about you is that you're just like a supreme hustler. And I remember listening to you present this, language model, learning model in San Salvador, and I was immediately like interested. Like, okay, how do I get involved? How do I learn about this? And I've been like dabbling in it, looking at it, using it for some search engine stuff for my Bitcoin only job. And I must say that it's really good. It's fast. It thinks on its feet. Me being a hardcore Bitcoiner, like I kind of tried to stump it a bit, and it seemed to really know what it was talking about. So kudos to you on that, brother. I think that that's a great project, and I see the future being very bright for Spirit of Satoshi.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
Fesky, you're currently working on a bunch of things, of course, but I think your newest kind of venture right now is this Nostra-enabled travel and community social network called Satlantis. What are the unique features of this new platform, and how does it leverage Bitcoin and Nostr technology?
Yeah, so to sort of clarify for the audience, like, so, and at the lack of, at the risk of sounding like someone who just jumps onto things, is we we pivoted from Spirit of Satoshi to Satlantis. So it's not like we shut Spirit of Satoshi down and started a new business or anything. It's like the same team, same organization, same investors, same me, all that sort of stuff. And we just, the Satlantis thing actually came about after the San Salvador conference. Someone reached out to me and said, hey, could you build a travel assistant? So kind of like, could we use Spirit of Satoshi to tell people where they can go and eat, where they can spend their Bitcoin, what the rules are around Bitcoin, the legislation, all this sort of stuff in San Salvador and then the rest of the world. And that's how the idea originally started. And as we kind of went down that path, we realized, okay, well, chat interface is not the right UX for that kind of a product, for like a travel concierge. What is better is something like Nomad List or TripAdvisor. And the original idea for Satlantis, we were just going to call it Bitcoin Nomad List or Destination Bitcoin. And it was going to be like a directory of all the Bitcoin cities, Bitcoin circular economies, meetups, all this sort of stuff, like to have a place where people can discover that. But the more we dug into it, the more we realized that, hey, there's we want to have ambassadors in all these local places. How do we validate the ambassador? Do we use Twitter? Maybe we should use Nostra. And then as we started talking about Nostra, we're like, okay, what else is useful about Nostra that we can put? Or maybe we can make each of the meetups an actual Nostra event. We want to do scoring for cities. Could we make the scoring an actual event? Could we make the city an actual event type? So that way it's available across the whole Nostra network. And the more we dug into it, the more we realized that, hey, there's actually something big here. And it kind of dawned on us after a couple of months of just running this as a side project. And it's funny, it almost reminds me of the Slack story. So I don't know if people realize, but Slack started off as a completely different business. They were trying to build games and they were trying to solve how they communicate inside the team. And they built Slack by accident. And then that became the product. They threw away their core product and that's what happened. And that's sort of what's happened here with Satlantis, is that we went out to build an AI model, couldn't figure out how to commercialize it. At the same time, we were running this little side project, and that started to gain some traction, and that caught a bunch of interest. So we open sourced the model, and we doubled down on Satlantis, which is now, like the big aha moment that we had is Nostra's superpower is the fact that it's pushed identity and the social graph down to the protocol level. And that means you have this rich, like kind of, let me explain it this way. The power of Instagram, the power of Twitter, the power of Facebook and all of these social networks is the social graph. Instagram knows what you want. Facebook knows what you want even before you know it because it understands you, right? And that's the power of a social graph. The issue with having the social graph in the hands of a company is that they have a lot of manipulative control over you, right? They can do whatever they want with you. They can feed whatever information they want with you. They can kind of lead you. But if we can take that power and push it down to the protocol level where no one individual company owns it, and then we can build products on top of that that leverage the intelligence of the social graph, each in unique ways, you can actually build new applications. So the idea here is that I see Nostra, like people kind of confuse Nostra, like, oh, isn't that the decentralized version of Twitter? No, it's not. Nostra is an entire framework for a new set of applications that will be built on top. Each application using Nostra to enhance what it delivers. So in our case, we're a travel and community network. So kind of like TripAdvisor or Nomad List, but with the power of an Instagram, with the power of the social graph. So that when you're traveling somewhere, I mean, the first thing you do, like we already do this, but just manually. When I go somewhere, I find out who the people are there that are like Bitcoiners. I ask them, where's the places I can eat? Where should I visit? What should I do? Like all this sort of stuff. And I do it via recommendation. I do that manually. If I could use Nostra to help establish the preferences, the likes, the things that I should go and see, the places I should go and eat, the stuff that I should do, etc., you can really scale that manual process. And that's kind of what Satlantis ended up being. It's how can I put it, like a dynamic directory experience. Like you go on a city page and you will see what is relevant to you based on your social graph, and I'll see what's relevant to me based on my social graph. Like today, if you and I both go to San Salvador, if we go to TripAdvisor and we look up San Salvador, we'll see the exact same page. The same restaurants, the same things to do, blah, blah, blah. So it's all static. But on Satlantis, if you and I both go to San Salvador, and let's just say, for example, you're interested in surfing and I'm interested in food, your page will be more about surfing, my page will be more about food. And the kind of people I'll see, the kind of events, the kind of merchants, the kind of posts and all this sort of stuff will evolve based on who we are. And that's dynamic, and that's where I think the future is going. And that's something Nostra enables because it's an open social graph to build on top of. And for me, that was like the aha moment. That's like, holy fucking shit, we've got something big here. And we're like, all right, Spirit of Satoshi is great and all, cool idea, but fuck it. Open source that, double down on this, we raise a little bit of more money, and then this is what we're doing now.
Yes, and what I found amazing just at first glance, I thought of it like, okay, there's tons of apps out here that do that, right? Like I thought instantly about the Orange Pill app. And I'm like, okay, they use geolocation. If I go somewhere, I can find all of the relevant Bitcoiners that are in that area. But then when you start to put Nostr into the conversation, I think that's what separates you from the fray as far as some of these other applications. I feel like a lot of people, I don't want to say they're scared of Nostr, but I think that there's a high technical level of understanding with Nostr while building a mobile application that I think a lot of people have not mastered. So I'm definitely excited to see what Satlantis is going to do on that front because everybody's using geolocation. A lot of Bitcoiners don't want people accessing them outside of where they want to be accessed at. And I think that Satlantis will be a lot better of an option for people that are just like a little weirded out by that,
Well,
in
yeah,
my opinion.
so let me tell you something about the Orange Pill app thing. It's a noble first attempt. So what the Orange Pill app guys realized was that Bitcoiners want to connect with Bitcoiners, and that points to a larger concept, which is people want to connect with like-minded and like-valued people. So it's not just Bitcoiners, but there's nomads, there's vegans, there's carnivores, there's all these sort of different people, like people who like homeschooling, people who like travel, like there's all these communities that have emerged, and they're kind of finding each other in all these different places. Some in Telegram, some on WhatsApp, some on Facebook, some on Instagram, some on Orange Pill app, and all this sort of stuff. So it's already happening, but it's like really disconnected, and it's really difficult to do. So with us, what we saw is, and particularly like with the Orange Pill example, is I tried Orange Pill app, and to me it just felt really weird because, you know, someone would message me and be like, hey, you want to catch up? Like, I don't know who this person is. I don't know if we share followers, none of that stuff. Whereas with Nostra, it's like if someone reaches out to me on the city page, so if I'm in Brazil and somebody is coming to the city that I'm at or follows the city, they can see that, oh, Svetski's there. They can reach out. I can immediately see, okay, we share followers, you know, we share similar kind of content and like and all this sort of stuff. I'm way more inclined to connect with this person than some rando reaching out to me on a geolocation app. That's kind of like a bit weird to me. So Nostra enables this kind of the social element to come into this. And honestly, like Orange Pill app kind of becomes a feature of Satlantis. Like Satlantis just has chat enabled, not because we had to build the chat, but because Nostra has it. Now, mind you, Nostra chat is a little bit challenging. It's a little bit broken. There's, you know, all this sort of shit, you know, with Nostra because it's an early tech. So, you know, there's challenges that we need to solve there. But fundamentally, like when you're coming to a new location, you want to connect with people, but then you want your experience of the location to be richer based on who you follow, the things you're interested, etc. And this is where I guess we really differentiate from something like Orange Pill app. Orange Pill app is just about connecting with people in a particular location. We are about discovering a new location through a unique lens, and one of the things inside that is connecting with people that are like-minded. So that's where I say it's like, you know, the entirety of the Orange Pill app is kind of like a feature of what Satlantis offers more holistically for traveling nomad and community.
100%. Thank you for clearing that up, Fetsky, because I know people might be a little confused on that. So, Fetsky, you know, we've had conversations in the past, and I know that you're a man of philosophy. And do any of your beliefs influence your projects and advocacy for Bitcoin? And can you share how these ideas have driven the development of your initiatives?
For sure. So obviously, I mean, I've been a Bitcoin advocate now for almost a decade. I've been writing about it, talking about it, tweeting about it, podcasting about it, all this sort of stuff. And a lot of that has revolved around my understanding of Austrian economics and freedom and responsibility and all this stuff. So a big part of the Spirit of Satoshi push in particular was that, right? Before that, there was Amber back in the day. And I know you've done a lot of work with the guys from the Satoshi app, right? I was one of the first guys out there to point out that, hey, Bitcoin is just a savings instrument, and we need to build an application that enables people to dollar cost average with the save in it. So when we built Amber, it was driven by that philosophy. Now, Satlantis in particular, and something I've been talking about for a number of years, is this idea that democracy is a scam, that the governance model of civilization is going to transform. We're going to move more into like a patchwork network state world. And, the sovereign individual thesis and travel and nomading and going to where you're best treated and all these sort of philosophies and that weave together, right? Like individual sovereignty as a concept is guiding why we're building Satlantis. Like sometimes I let myself get carried away and think about, okay, if we build this location-centric social network effectively by leveraging the open social graph that Nostra is, what could this become in 3, 5, 10 years time? And like a thought experiment that started off as a joke was, I met with Parker Lewis while we were in Prague a couple of weeks ago, or a month or two ago. And, there's this, like, Parker's always said, hey, I'm going to be the future mayor of Austin. And I totally believe him, and I think he should be. But what I told him, I said, dude, you should be an ambassador on Satlantis for Austin, and you should help grow the community there and, build your followers. And, like, imagine if Parker, after, like, helping build out Austin, like adding events and being like a central figure, ends up with like 1 million, 2 million followers on Austin as Satlantis grows. If he wants to become the mayor, I mean, the people following Austin, inside Austin, could technically it becomes a powerful platform for people like that, for leaders in particular communities. So I kind of let myself imagine that maybe one day Satlantis will become large enough and Nostra will be important enough to help like this new network state model emerge. I almost think of it as like a network state operating system without, getting too technical here, but it's a very interesting concept and a very interesting direction for us to take. And to your initial point, like the philosophy, like knowing where the puck is going, I'm sure that the world is going to be like split between the tension of globalism and localism. And I want to build for localism. And in order to build for localism, you need to build something that is location. It's in the word, localism, location centric. And that's what we're trying to do with Satlantis. And that's what really feeds me. Like, I honestly feel like my entire life has culminated to this point. It's like all of the experience, all of the stuff that I've read and said and done and what the world needs and all this sort of stuff like has come together. And it's coming together in Satlantis. Satlantis is going to be my entrepreneurial manifestation of all of the things that have come together.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. It's like arbitraging influence. That's what it sounds like to me, and I think that's just such a smart play. Can't say anything bad about it from what I've heard so far. So I'm definitely looking forward to this project for sure. Svetski, so looking back at your journey from launching all these different apps, from Amber to your current projects, what are some of the most valuable lessons you've learned about innovation and community building within the Bitcoin space?
So I think let's start with community building. So community building in the Bitcoin space. That's evolved over time. In the early days, it was very much like there was almost like a golden age of writing about Bitcoin, right? And that was sort of 2017, 18, 19, 20, 20. And then after that, it's kind of like everything's just being rehashed, right? Mm-hmm. But back then there was a golden age, and the people like Gigi and Brandon Quinham and Breedlove and myself and all this sort of stuff, I wrote well over 1 million words between my private blog and Bitcoin Magazine and God knows what else, Darn Communist Manifesto, etc. Like, we pumped out a whole lot of thinking and philosophy about this stuff, and that helped to establish and build communities. And I didn't set out, I didn't one day decide, I'm going to build a Bitcoin community, or I'm going to help to build this Bitcoin community, or I'm going to build a community around me. And it was just I just had a bunch of shit to say, and I threw my hat in the ring, and it happened automatically. Same thing with Twitter. I grew a following not because I followed some sort of growth hacking recipe or knew what thing to say or had an intention to build a specific community. It was, I've got things to say. And it seems to me that the community almost finds itself in a certain way. It's like the people are drawn to a message like magnets and iron filings, right? People sort of coalesce around a particular thing. And I almost think you find these kindred spirits on the journey or on the path because those kindred spirits find their way to the same path as you. And all of a sudden, I'm sure two people climbing Mount Everest would find that they could be very close friends even if they didn't know each other, because the fact that they were climbing Mount Everest, like the kind of person that will climb Mount Everest is probably similar. Do you understand what I mean? So it's like they find their way. So I think that's my comment about communities, and every business requires that you have a message and a mission and a vision which attracts people with the same vision, mission, like that comes not only from here, but sort of from here, right? And that would be my comment about community. And then in terms of innovation, this one's interesting. It's my favorite entrepreneur of all time is, and always will be, I think, Steve Jobs. He, in my opinion, wasn't someone who was data driven. Like, you've got kind of these two spectrums. You've got like the Steve Jobs of the world, then you have like the Mark Zuckerbergs or Bill Gates of the world, right? And the Mark Zuckerbergs and Bill Gates of the world are like pure data driven. The guys are basically both robots, and they don't, it's not intuition that leads them. It's data, reproducible, like everything is a number of some sort. And granted, that is clearly a way to build a business. Microsoft and Facebook are big for a reason. But there's other stuff which is more like intuitive and inspirational. And Elon's probably a modern day version of Steve Jobs in this sense. Like, he went and built the fucking Cybertruck. The Cybertruck doesn't fit in a category. Like, I went and hired a car yesterday when we got back home, and like, it's just so funny, even in car hires, like all of the cars are kind of converging into the same thing. Like each class, like they offered me, a particular class of car, and they're like, okay, we have this one, this one, this one. And I asked them to show me a photo. And basically 3 different brands of car, like the models look the same. I was like, so what's the difference? And they're like, oh, it's the same thing. I'm like, okay, so why even have the options? It's like everything's kind of converged because the data suggests that this is the size of the engine, that's the shape of the car, that's the price point, blah, 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 and everything's like converging. No one's building anything unique or interesting. Like, there's no more Steve Jobs like doing anything. And this is why I like Elon in particular. Like, not that I agree with electric cars and all that sort of stuff, it's bullshit, but the guy comes up with this idea of a fucking Cybertruck. Like, that's different. There's no category that it fits in. And that's unique and that's powerful. And I think that's where innovation is. It's like innovation has to be intuitively led, not just data and numbers and what's reproducible and stuff. That like lacks soul. It's very material. Whereas the soul comes from, hey, what's interesting, what's unique, and where can we take this? What doesn't exist today? Let's not do what just the data tells us. Let's do what intuition or divine inspiration tells us. It's a very different place to come from. So yeah, that would be my comment about intuition.
Well said, well said. How do you think about the regulatory changes that will impact Bitcoin's adoption lately? Like, you're seeing a lot of the political spectrum now talking about Bitcoin. I think Trump is going to speak at Bitcoin Magazine this year. And, there's this perceived legitimacy that so many mainstream financial entities are talking about now. How do you feel about that, being in the space so long and now seeing people flip the coin in the financial world?
I mean, honestly, I don't give a shit. Just zero comment, couldn't care less. Like, I'm so focused now on building stuff that I don't even know what regulations are coming or what anybody's saying or what fucking BlackRock did or what Jim Cramer said or any of that shit. I couldn't give a flying fuck.
Okay. So, based on your extensive experience and current projects working in the Bitcoin space, where do you see, in your opinion, because people always ask this, where do you see Bitcoin heading maybe in the next 5 years, both on the technology front and its role in society?
Yeah, I think so I'll answer this by saying I wrote an article maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. It was called The 3 Generations Theory. Highly recommend it as a read. Thomas Strolite reckons it's the best article I've ever written. Maybe, maybe not. But it poses the opinion that Bitcoin's going to take at least 60 years to reach proper widespread adoption. And I based that on the idea of generations. Bitcoin is still squarely, and let's just use for round numbers, 2010 to 2030, 2030 to 2050, 2050 to 2070, right? Like round numbers. I know Bitcoin came out in 2009, but whatever. Like we're just going to use that as the brackets. Each generation of Bitcoin is led in terms of businesses, in terms of message, in terms of content, in terms of like infrastructure. It's led by a particular generation. And right now we're in the generation that is leading Bitcoin of people who were alive during fiat world. We literally and metaphorically speaking are measuring Bitcoin against the old world. We are measuring Bitcoin against the US dollar. We have 1 foot in the old world, 1 foot in the new world, right? And we can't help but compare Bitcoin. And a comparison is like an exchange, right? Like, so what is the US dollar price of Bitcoin? It is a comparison between the purchasing power of the US dollar and the purchasing power of Bitcoin. What is the euro price of Bitcoin? It is a comparison between the euro purchasing power and Bitcoin's purchasing power. That's like, we literally live in that paradigm. And right now, the focus in the comparison paradigm, in the paradigm of the paradigm being led by those of us who were born before Bitcoin and came to prominence in this age, is speculative. It is about comparing Bitcoin. So we are well into the speculative side. So the next 5 years, I imagine that we are finishing the first generation of Bitcoin adoption, which is very speculatively oriented. I don't expect anything super interesting to be built beyond exchanges, mining, wallets. That's like the 3 things. And if you look at every single successful Bitcoin related company, it's something to do with that, right? Like it's one of those 3 things. Nothing else is really sparked. But the next generation is people literally born after Bitcoin launched. People born in 2009, 2010. They're going to be 20, 21 years old, 22 years old, etc. Coming 2030 onwards. They're going to start building businesses. They're going to start allocating capital. And they don't have a concept of a world before Bitcoin. Like, people have to understand that their wiring is different. They will view Bitcoin differently. And after 2030, Bitcoin, by that stage, with more speculation, with more investment, with more interest, will be far more valuable. And as it's more valuable, it'll be more stable. So couple that with the idea that these kids who are coming of age now, who will become capital allocators and business operators, they're going to view Bitcoin completely differently. Our generation, will still have influence, but they're going to view it very differently. They will start, in my opinion, to build more infrastructure kind of things that just uses Bitcoin as a feature, like that basically embeds Bitcoin in its operation. So it's less about exchanges, less about wallets, less about mining, and more about Bitcoin as a integrated payments mechanism within X application. And I hope that Satlantis is an early example of something like that, is because inside Satlantis, I imagine at some point for us to have an ad engine in there. And the ad engine, guess what, is going to be Bitcoin denominated. And creators from all around the world will be incentivized to produce beautiful content so that they can earn a component of the ad revenue generated on the platform, kind of like what Elon's doing with impressions on Twitter. But Elon is handicapped by the financial legacy system because he can only pay out people who have a Stripe account. Like, we'll be able to literally stream money to people creating content, creating engagement, creating activity on Satlantis in Bitcoin, in Sat, to anyone, anywhere in the world at any point in time. That's what I sort of mean by the infrastructure stage. So that second stage is going to be about that. And then the third stage, 2050 to 2070, when people like you and I are too old to matter and we're gonna fucking die, or we've died, or whatever the case is, and those kids who were 2030 to 2050 have come of age and now they have kids, that next generation, who will have very little influence from us because we're too old, or like I said, or we died, they will completely view Bitcoin through a different lens, and they're going to evolve it in a completely different direction. And that's when we get to the stage of broad scale mass adoption, if you want to call it that. But anyway, I know I've kind of gone off on a tangent here, but fundamentally speaking, I think the next 5 years is we will reach the zenith of Bitcoin's speculative period, where the paradigm that we're in is about comparing Bitcoin to the existing legacy system. That's what we've got to go through. 2030 will bring a new age.
100%. And, it makes me really think about, when you talk about the next generation, and I know I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in here, and a lot of people don't like it, but how do you feel about ordinals? So like ordinals has this recent development and it started to put this additional load on the Bitcoin network. How do you view these changes? Do you think that these will represent a fundamental shift in how the Bitcoin network will be used in that new generation being born in 2009, 2010, etc.?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm not too versed or familiar with any of the stuff that's going on in ordinals. I've seen like a bunch of people yapping about it and stuff, so I don't know enough to have a real specific comment here. If it's got stickiness, I guess people from that generation will find a use for it. I'm not convinced yet that it's got broad-based stickiness, because if I look at it objectively, there's like periods of interest and then it kind of dissipates, and there's periods of interest and it kind of dissipates. So it's kind of almost like, it feels like it's being pushed instead of pulling, right? Like, so really good things that happen are generally pulled along. Things that you have to continually push and like throw money at, in my opinion, end up fizzling out. And I don't know which side of the fence Ordinal sits on.
Nice, I like that. That's the first. You're the first person I heard really say it in that way, because there's so much vacillation with ordinals, and people are like, on one side of the spectrum they think it's great, on the other side, even David Bailey gets a lot of heat for it. Like they just, Twitter can be a weird place when it comes to Bitcoiners. So I just wanted to hear your opinion, Fetsky, because I know, and what I love too is that you've been kind of like labeled like the bad boy in Bitcoin, and I just been noticing in the last like few years, like you've been really head down, just like back to the hustler's mentality, just building, like you're not like engaging with the Twitter share people and yelling at people anymore. Like you're kind of more laser focused, and I just love to see it. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I had my days and in the trenches, done with that shit, bro. Other people can yell now. I got things to do.
Most definitely. So Fetsky, what advice would you give entrepreneurs who want to start a Bitcoin focused business, and what are the key factors they should consider to succeed?
I mean, I think people should first of all not focus on Bitcoin businesses and think beyond that. So they should just look at things as a business and build a business. Like, it doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin or not. Like, find something that you understand well, that you give a shit about. Understand where the puck is going. So what I said earlier about we're in the speculative era right now, and there's going to be another era coming. So think about where we're going, and then figure out a way to solve a problem. Like, the whole point of a business is to put a framework around problem solving. That's it. Like, an entrepreneur solves a problem, realizes that the solution to that problem is valuable to people, and then builds a business, which is a framework to deliver that at scale and to benefit or to profit from solving that problem, which is a fantastic thing. So the advice is always, in fact, it's not Bitcoin related advice, it's business related advice. So like, take the Bitcoin cap off, and if Bitcoin is something that interests you, look at it through the entrepreneur's lens. Go and fix a problem, solve a problem, understand where the puck is going, produce something of value, put a structure around it, build a business of excellence. And that's, the same advice that any person who's done business before in a successful capacity will tell you.
Yeah, and I think you could definitely have like a master class on that topic, just from your humble beginnings and, trying and failing, building something new, never getting bogged down by your failures and just continuing to innovate and push. I think that a lot of people, not only in the Bitcoin space, but in the business world, lack that grit. And I think that grit is something that you're now showcasing just through proof of work of building these solid products, whether it's Spirit of Satoshi, even Amber, I'm sure is still being used by people, and just your new ventures too. So I commend you, Fesky, on your hustlers and, ambition, and being able to kind of roll with the punches in this crazy, crazy Bitcoin society that we're currently building. And, we're just going to continue to push this narrative to the next level of innovation and new applications that people can use globally.
Thank you, bro. That really means a lot. There's a lot of people out there who are like, have the alternate viewpoint. It's like, oh yeah, fucking Svetsky's just launching a new thing again and all that sort of stuff. But I don't think many of those people have actually built something themselves. And that's where, those words mean a lot, bro, because that's something I've dedicated my life to building things, and I spent a period yelling on Twitter, and unfortunately, the yelling on Twitter has become something I'm more known for, which is unfortunate because most of my life I've actually built things, and I want to bring that to the forefront now. And yelling on Twitter, I'll leave it to other people.
Yes, and hopefully this episode highlights that for the audience that might have a different view of you.
Thanks, man.
So thank you, Alex, for sharing your experiences with us today. To our audience, if you found this conversation as fascinating as I did, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Bitcoin Source, a Bitcoin conversation. Thank you, Fetsky, for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on for another conversation. Until then, keep exploring the vast potential of Bitcoin and stay informed with the Bitcoin Source. Peace.
Thank you, brother.